Huntington Village on Long Island, New York, is often described as a jewel of the East Coast. With its picturesque streets, refined architecture, and direct access to the Atlantic, the town has built a reputation over decades as a wedding capital. For many American couples, it's the dream place to say, "I do." Huntington Village weddings are known to be majestic, sometimes extravagant, often breathtaking. They symbolize unity, stability, and the promise of forever. But perfection comes at a price. The cost of celebrating a wedding there is astronomical, and while the celebrations can be unforgettable, many couples find themselves afterward facing arguments, debts, and disappointment. Still, for those who can afford it, the town offers the ideal setting: a sea breeze, a timeless landscape, and the promise of happiness. In 2009, Annie La, a young woman just 24 years old, was preparing to live this very dream. Her wedding was planned in Huntington Village, scheduled for the month of September. Like so many brides before her, she was in the middle of the frantic final weeks of preparation. Choosing her hairstyle, testing makeup, finalizing decorations, the details piled up, adding to the stress. Nights grew shorter, anxiety higher. Yet Annie was determined. She wanted this day to be the most beautiful of her life. By her side was her fiancé, Jonathan Wadowski, a doctoral student she had met years earlier. Their love story began at the University of Rochester. Annie was in her first year of studies, Jonathan too. Their personalities couldn't have been more different. Annie was outgoing, cheerful, full of energy, while Jonathan was quiet, introverted, and thoughtful. And yet from their first meetings, something clicked. Opposites attracted, and a deep bond formed between them. In 2008, Jonathan made his love official with a proposal. He offered Annie a ring, and she accepted with joy. Their marriage was now only months away. At the same time, Annie was excelling in her academic path. Her intelligence and determination opened the doors of Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut, where she joined the pharmacology doctoral program. Her research focused on degenerative diseases. Ambitious, dedicated, and passionate, Annie hoped one day to contribute to a discovery that could save countless lives. Jonathan, meanwhile, pursued his own doctoral program in physics at Columbia University in New York. The distance between them, barely 100 kilometers, seemed manageable on paper, but in reality, the workload was crushing. Daily life became an endless race: courses, labs, research, deadlines. Annie and Jonathan didn't have the luxury of seeing each other often, but they remained close. They called each other every evening without fail, and weekends became sacred moments. Baseball games, nature outings, simple walks hand in hand. Those 2 days were theirs, and nothing could replace them. Everything seemed to be moving toward a bright, promising future. But on Tuesday, September 8, 2009, 5 days before the long-awaited wedding, everything fell apart. That morning, Annie went to her laboratory at Yale as usual. Surveillance cameras captured her at 10:09 a.m., entering the building on Amistad Street, where she conducted her research. She swiped her access card, walked down the hall, and disappeared into the lab's maze of rooms. But that day, Annie never came back out. At first, her absence didn't raise alarm. People thought she was simply late or busy. But by evening, Annie still hadn't returned home. Her roommate, worried, tried to reach her. Calls went unanswered. Annie's fiancé, Jonathan, who was preparing to join her in just a few days for their wedding, received no word either. The next day, with still no sign of her, her disappearance was reported to Yale authorities, who quickly contacted the police. Investigators began by exploring the most likely possibilities. Could Annie, under the immense stress of her studies and her wedding preparations, have cracked? Could she have fled, taking time away from everything? This possibility seemed weak. Annie wasn't the type to run away without a word. She was reliable, meticulous, and responsible. She loved her fiancé deeply and looked forward to the wedding. Voluntary disappearance didn't match her profile. The police turned their attention to her surroundings. The Yale campus was considered one of the safest in the United States. Surveillance, security officers, access control, everything was thought to minimize risks. Yet the last trace of Annie was inside that laboratory. Her access badge confirmed her presence in several rooms that morning, the last being room G22. From that moment on, no new movement was recorded. Annie had vanished inside. Investigators discovered her cell phone and wallet still in her office. Those were things she never left behind voluntarily. The atmosphere grew heavier. Something had happened. The FBI was called in. Agents set up a command post on campus. Their first priority, question Annie's inner circle. Jonathan, the fiancé, was at the top of the list. It's a sad but common reflex in disappearance cases. The partner is often the first suspect. Jonathan was interrogated, his alibi checked, his phone calls examined. He even submitted to a polygraph test, which he passed without issue. Jonathan was cleared. Attention shifted back to the Yale laboratory. Colleagues were questioned, security tapes scrutinized. Agents noticed something curious. On the day Annie disappeared, a fire alarm forced the evacuation of the building. Was this a coincidence or a diversion created by her potential attacker? Searches expanded. Investigators dug through dumpsters, fearing Annie's body had been hidden in the trash during the chaos. Nothing. Days passed. Anxiety grew. Annie's wedding date approached. Media began to cover the story intensively. A brilliant Yale student, about to be married, vanished without a trace. America was captivated. Then came the first physical clue. While combing through room G22, investigators spotted a small brown bead on the floor. It matched Annie's necklace. A little further, faint traces of blood were found on a wall. The lab was sealed as a crime scene. Searches intensified. More disturbing clues appeared. A bloody glove, a sock hidden in a ceiling, droplets overlooked in the initial sweep. The puzzle was assembling piece by piece. Annie had been attacked in the laboratory itself. 3 people had access to that area. 2 were quickly cleared. 1 remained. Raymond Clark, a 24-year-old technician responsible for the care of laboratory animals. Clark was known as meticulous, sometimes overly so. He often reprimanded students for not respecting hygiene or security procedures. At first glance, he was a man devoted to his work. But when investigators questioned him about Annie, his answers seemed rehearsed, evasive. Surveillance footage showed him leaving the lab during the fire alarm. Sitting on stairs outside, head in his hands, visibly agitated. Suspicion grew, but proof was still missing. On September 13, 2009, 2 days before Annie's scheduled wedding, a horrible discovery ended all hope. In a mechanical room of the laboratory basement, a strange smell caught the attention of investigators. Behind a wall panel, crammed between pipes, they found Annie's body. She had been hidden headfirst inside a confined space. The autopsy later revealed she had been strangled. The fairy tale of Huntington Village was forever shattered. Instead of a wedding, a funeral would be organized. DNA traces left no doubt. Samples taken from Annie's clothing matched those of Raymond Clark. The young technician was arrested on September 17, 2009. He first denied, then changed versions, but faced with overwhelming evidence, he pleaded guilty in 2011. His sentence, 44 years in prison. The motive? Investigators believe Clark developed an unhealthy fixation on Annie. Her charisma, her energy, her upcoming wedding, all of it may have triggered in him a mix of obsession, frustration, and rage. When she resisted his advances or confronted him about his behavior, violence erupted. Annie's story remains one of the most shocking tragedies in Yale's history. She embodied intelligence, ambition, and love. She was on the verge of a life she had built step by step, surrounded by family, friends, and her fiancé. Instead, she fell victim to a senseless act of violence. Today, her memory endures. At Yale, tributes were organized. Scholarships in her name support young women pursuing scientific research. Her family and Jonathan, her fiancé, continue to carry the pain of her absence, a wound that can never fully heal. This case is a chilling reminder. Evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. Behind the walls of an institution dedicated to knowledge and progress, a predator was hiding in plain sight. Annie trusted her environment, her colleagues, her routine. That trust was betrayed. Her dream of Huntington Village never came true. But her story continues to echo, warning us all of the fragility of life and the importance of never underestimating the darkness that sometimes hides behind ordinary faces. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to Annie's story. Cases like hers deserve to be remembered, not only for the tragedy, but for the life that was taken away too soon. Annie Lowe was more than a victim. She was a brilliant young woman, a loving partner, and someone who could have changed the world. And it's in telling her story that we keep her light alive. Annie was more than a victim. She was a brilliant young woman, a loving partner, and someone who could have changed the world. And it's in telling her story that we keep her light alive. If you found Annie's story important, please consider giving this video a like. It helps more people discover cases that deserve to be remembered. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What struck you most about Annie's case? Do you think institutions like universities are doing enough to keep students safe? And if you want to hear more true crime stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next video. Thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping Annie's memory alive with me today. Until next time, take care and stay safe.